Okay, so you have fairly recently published your annual trends report. I think the title was Five Gen AI Trends even for 2025. Beware the AI Agent Reckoning. And I guess the name kind of gives the clue there that it's very much focused on the rise of AI agents. So just perhaps a bit of background to it, and then we'll sort of drill down into the findings in a bit more detail.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that for many people, agentic AI is really the goal of AI in general, right? There's this idea that we're working towards a world where these systems can become autonomous and really impactful in our day-to-day life. And we think here at Dataiku that that's starting now.
And in terms of the sort of the likely influence, if you like, of agentic AI, how do you see it growing? As you say, it's starting now, but I know in this world we live in, it's difficult to predict what's going to happen this afternoon, let alone, any further out. But just your thoughts, I suppose, as to how prevalent it might become and the sort of the likely time frame, if that's possible.
Yeah, I'm not really a betting woman, so I won't give numbers that I've come up with. But, we reference in the article and we talk daily about some of our industry leading analysts. And according to Gartner, by 2028, they say at least 15% of day-to-day decisions will be made autonomously through agentic AI systems. And that's up from what they're considering 0% in 2024. So obviously a pretty quick rise. And that has to do with a lot of different components. One, the performance of this type of technology, but two, the more general acceptance by both company leaders and individuals across the globe.
Okay, and in terms of some of the key findings of the report itself, perhaps we can look at some of those. And one was around the fact that there are, again, perhaps no surprise here, but there are some big Gen AI investments, but people are wanting ROI. And I mean, again, you can look at different reports, but I would say anecdotally from the ones I've read that more often than not, people are maybe disappointed with, the returns, at least thus far in terms of Gen AI. What does the sort of report uncover around that?
Yeah, so I've often said that when I joined Dataiku back in 2020, so 5 years ago now, there was money for science experiments related to data science. And what I mean by that is that at the time, interest rates were low, data science was sexy. There was this idea that we could experiment and test out and do POCs with data and just see where we landed. But that's really not the case any longer. I think because there has been a shift away from just taking advantage of commoditized or, off the shelf type of AI technologies, and more towards specific business use cases and impact to individuals and clients and overall operations, we're expecting to get more out of it. And so in the report, we talk about two things that are in contention. One is that 88% of organizations surveyed plan to increase their Gen AI investments in 2025. And then on the other hand, that the executives are feeling pressure to actually document an ROI. So 85% of the data analytics and IT leaders report that they're under this growing pressure. And I think we see four main challenges when actually doing that quantification, because Gen AI specifically is becoming more and more embedded in daily life. It's actually difficult to isolate what is the Gen AI impact versus other initiatives or general technology improvements. So separating those two things. There's also a lack of clear metrics or benchmarks for measuring success. So if we imagine, one of my clients is using some Gen AI related features of our platform to help them better identify sales leads and actually attack the right individuals. But that's a case where they had conversion metrics in the past, right? When they write an email, when they do a cold call, they know how many they're converting. And so they can they can accurately say that with the LLM improvements, they've reached like 70% more efficiency. So that's the conversion that they're getting for people actually taking the meetings, taking calls, moving towards like having a sales cycle. But you don't really have those metrics for most business practices that go on in daily life, right? I don't go around asking my coworkers, how long does it take to make that report? How long does it, usually require you to do X, Y, and Z thing? So a lack of a clear like benchmark or starting process makes ROI kind of difficult to calculate. The other ones, high upfront costs, right? What's a long-term benefit versus like the investment that we've put in right now? If we invest in the engineers or the data scientists or other people to actually set up this practice, how long until we see some benefit? And then, you know, specific initiatives um, and like difficulty attributing large language model service or usage costs to those initiatives. So is there like a general uptick in productivity? Is there a specific thing that we weren't able to do before? So again, maybe a high level, 4 things that make quantifying that value hard is isolating the Gen AI impact from other technology or initiatives, lack of clear metrics or benchmarks for measuring the success, high upfront costs versus long-term benefit, and then 4, difficulty attributing large language model service or usage costs to specific initiatives. So hopefully you can see where it's a bit of a balancing act between how much do we invest and how much do we actually document the value of that success.
Yeah, so I guess a recommendation there would be when making an investment or planning investment to sort of draw a line in the sand or wherever you're deploying it. And even as you say, if you haven't got specific metrics, at least you've got a reasonable understanding, anecdotally or whatever from the people involved as to what they're doing now. And then you can maybe understand in, 6 months' time or whatever, the ways in which hopefully things have improved. Is even at that level, that's something that's definitely worth doing, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We really see benefit from 2 different levers, if you will. So the ability to do tasks that you couldn't previously do. So finding use cases that are currently impossible based on skill set or data that's available or some other rationale, right? And having the Gen AI capabilities fill in the gaps for you. And so suddenly you are able to complete that use case and you can identify the value of the use case as being Gen AI value, or to actually do some analysis before you get started with a project around productivity in the org or within the team itself. And so even something as simple as a quick survey within to say, how long are you taking on these tasks? And then being able to, like you mentioned, 6 months later, identify that there were cost savings or efficiency gains based on the new tooling and new technology. It's really helpful.
Okay, and I know, and just generally, but when it comes to AI specifically, people are nervous around data privacy. So, just what did the report again? I sometimes it's a sort of double edge, isn't it? People know they've got to do it, but they're worried about it. So, balancing, I guess, the risk and the reward is where we end up. But just yeah, what did the report uncover around data privacy concerns?
Yeah. Well, a lot of data privacy concerns, actually, and specifically, the stats say 75% of C-suite executives worry about data privacy breaches as Gen AI adoption accelerates. Yet, 81% have a moderate or high level of trust in the usage of Gen AI. So it is clearly also a balancing act, as you mentioned, around being cautious, but optimistic about the impact that this technology can have. And I think that this is specifically important as we get more and more invested in using and managing multiple LLMs within an organization, because probably obvious to many that the more complexity that grows, the more difficult it can be to manage or to maintain that like data privacy and security. Managing multiple API keys, providing access to applications that are built on top of LLMs, or even ensuring that the right data is provided in the right use case or scenario. And this can become more serious, I suppose, or more severe when you start thinking about regulatory in like regulated industries, so compliance requirements, um, and data residency or sovereignty, even things like auditability or explainability, right? So this idea that not only do you want to ensure that the right data is used, the right security and privacy are maintained, but that if you had to explain that to someone who came in from an outsider perspective, you would be able to do so. I think that's one of the biggest benefits of using a platform like Dataiku is that we provide what is called the LLM mesh. So a service or framework on top of all of the other LLMs that you may want to access. Basically, an abstraction layer that allows you to access various LLM related services, provide federated control and analysis of their usage, and act as a central discovery and documentation locale so that, to solve some of those problems we mentioned, making sure that the actual access is controlled, that the auditability is there, and then the federated usage is maintained in an appropriate fashion. So rather than a bunch of rogue developers perhaps on their own.
I'm just wondering, I mean, maybe a silly question, but bearing in mind there's a certain amount of, so I'm not sure how to describe it, but the folks developing AI kind of want there to be no rules because they should be allowed to take data from wherever they want, ignore copyrights, etc. Because the benefits of AI. Do you think any of that attitude is going to sort of filter down into this data privacy, or because individual industries are, whether it's medical or whatever, very tightly regulated, they will always be able to sort of push back and resist AI's desire, if you like, just to sort of ignore the rules? I don't know if that's a fair characterization, but there's certainly elements that seem to think that AI is above everything else, all other considerations. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that it's important to maintain the difference between the organizations who create the models themselves, who have been maybe criticized for their use of existing information, data, art, etc., and the organizations who want to take advantage of Gen AI technology and LLMs specifically. So the majority of customers that we are working with are not developing any of their own models. And so it's highly unlikely that a medical a company or a financial industry would actually be involved in the scraping of data or otherwise the training of the model itself. What we at Dataiku hope to provide with tools like the LLM Mesh is that gateway to choose between all of the models that exist, all of the LLM providers that are on the market. And hopefully what that does is allows our customers to actually choose and define what sits right within their company policies, their regulated industries, and perhaps also their morals or values around the way that the data was collected. And so I think the optionality, if that's a word, the ability to choose between different providers, the sort of tech agnosticism, right? Perhaps today, the model that performs best is not the same one as tomorrow, or perhaps as you develop an AI practice internally, you realize there are certain sources you don't want a model trained on. It should be easy to continue using the systems you've built with just a different LLM provider in the background. And that's what we at Dataiku are hoping to provide.
Well, no, excellent. Thanks for that. And then back to the report, I think it includes or sort of identifies 5 trends which are driving Gen AI, and perhaps you might want to say a little bit about each. So I think the first one on my list is commoditization. I guess that people understand that, but again, I suppose it's how what that'll look like, and I suppose how quickly that will come about.
Yeah, the first one is commoditization of Gen AI use cases. And so I think generally speaking, commoditization is a big mouthful, but an easy one to get in that as AI agents become mainstream, enterprises have to start to think about building differentiated, or as we previously mentioned, ROI driven AI components. And really, this is about not pulling off the shelf functionality into your org and expecting that to take you to the next level. Because if you can purchase something off the shelf, so can your competitor. What we at Dataiku believe is the next level is putting in the hands of business people and technology experts alike the ability to build their own agents. And so what we do is provide a platform that allows those who can code and those who prefer to use visual features to create AI agents in hours. I'll say allow them to create AI agents in days, if not hours. In fact, one of the gentlemen on my team got a call yesterday about meeting with one of our insurance clients who wants to see what they can do around claims processing using agents. And he was able to put that demonstration together last night and presenting it to them as we speak right now. So really accelerating the time to value with some of these impressive technologies, but more importantly, making it so fully customizable that your individual users and clients are getting the best of the best. And it's, rather than the off the shelf component, you have a fully independent, customized agent that works for your business.
Okay, and number two, we potentially have covered most of it, but it's around the quantifying the ROIs that we have discussed. But it says under pressure, so I guess that's just emphasising maybe what we discussed, that there is the business, if you like, is pushing back or wanting to justify. If you're going to want all this money spent, you're going to have to explain to me or show me in a period of time, what we've got for our investment. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that quantifying ROI under pressure really comes from the fact that in the last 12 months, 66% of the leaders we surveyed had invested over $1 million in GenAI initiatives. And so now the board, their other executives are expecting to see a return on that. And that return is hard to quantify and extremely important. So they're starting to feel that specific this pressure for this year to produce results.
Okay, and number three, I've got on my notes is the LLM mess. So that sounds fairly horrifying, but hopefully you can either set our minds at rest or at least explain what this mess looks like.
Yes. Like anything, when tech is new and exciting, people can get their hands dirty immediately without necessarily thinking of the long-term sustainability of that initiative or program. And so we believe at Dataiku that the use of multiple LLMs will be absolutely essential for supporting AI agents and the ongoing use of them in a business capacity. But at the same time, it will create operational chaos, which sounds dramatic, but is true, really, unless enterprises implement an environment to consolidate and streamline their AI workloads, which is, of course, why I mentioned earlier that we created the LLM mesh to solve the LLM mess, which is that one single gateway to access all of your different LLM providers and other GenAI toolkit from one location.
Okay, and also something we've touched on when we talked a bit about data privacy, governance is a priority, I think. So yeah, I don't know if there's more you want to add to what we've previously chatted about in terms of that.
I think the only thing I'd add is that governance is absolutely a priority in all AI and really any data workflow or use case. And more so than ever, I think with things like the EU AI Act coming into play last year, to having more and more regulatory bodies looking into the way that companies use consumer data, apply models, and start to consider the future usage as well. There's a real risk for compliance and fines to come about if it's done incorrectly. But more so is this idea that we always speak of the front of the newspaper kind of reputational risks. You don't want to be seen as applying these futuristic technologies in archaic ways or misusing the data that you collect about your end consumer, employees, or otherwise in your use cases. And so making sure that it's applied correctly and that the results are trustworthy and believable is key. I think on top of that, there's just the idea that as AI systems become more sophisticated, specifically when we speak about AI agents, we're discussing the ability to do multiple steps in a process that's initiated from a single human interaction. And the complexity and compounding effect of that can be huge. So governance has to be built in throughout the entire process to ensure reliability of results and trustworthiness of end output. But again, at Dataiku, we encourage the human in the loop at any of the steps along the way. So while some, especially internal facing use cases, may become completely automated, it's unlikely that things that touch customers or consumers will be in the near term, right? We always want to ensure that we have an expert's eye at some point along the way.
Yeah, which is perhaps a nice segue to the final bit, which is about upskilling the workforce. And I'm guessing there's almost maybe two parts to it. There's the first bit, helping everyone to understand what AI is, what it's capable of, and then maybe the second part is how to use it, in the right way to get the best results. But just, please tell us more as to maybe anecdotally with customers, what you're finding, where people are starting from, and where they need to get to in terms of, training their workforce.
Yeah, this has been one of the most exciting things for me because I studied computer science in university. I have been in part of some mentorship programs for students who are still at my alma mater, as well as like engaging with, younger populations, getting them into math and science. And I think this is the first time where there's such an obvious, exciting technology to prompt people to do that, especially young people getting into the workforce. But at the same time, it's happening with people who are already in industry, where suddenly they're realizing, oh, this is something that could impact me from day one, right? The ease of use of some of these AI like agents specifically, but also builder and helper tools like Dataiku make people excited and want to learn. And so I think companies are harnessing that and they're starting to create a ton of different programs for upskilling their workforce. I think the majority say that they are creating a culture of continuous learning through knowledge sharing. So this can look like many things. I've worked with some dev teams and data science teams where they have weekly or monthly sort of showcases to demonstrate the different use cases and projects that people have built and how it's impacting the rest of the teams. Road shows where they kind of go on a tour and demonstrate that, internal conferences, etc. But it can go a lot further. I think the most impactful initiatives that I've seen are actually mentorship opportunities within accounts or within some of our client organizations, where they get the experts at using this technology to actually take on board people who have specific projects or ideas for using AI in the business and get them a few steps along the way. But companies are doing a lot. They're investing in technologies to make sure that people can take advantage of this revolution. They're offering formal training programs, self-serve resources for on-demand learning. I think it's really an opportunity for them to show their commitment, not only to improving the business function as it is now, but also to help upskill their teams and improve the foundation of their career for the future.
Okay, so if it's possible to summarize what's a fairly complex and fast-moving landscape, I don't know whether it's the report says it or again, anecdotally from your own considerable experience, is Gen AI delivering as expected up to this point, or is there a way to go before most organizations you think will, or at least think they will be reaping the benefits? Well, I suppose, yeah, well, if you took a snapshot, are the majority of companies excited and pleased with what they're doing, or are there quite a lot of disillusioned folks out there for whatever reason it hasn't, either because of the ROI, they're like, oh, well, it seems quite expensive and what have we got for it? Or it just isn't working as they thought. I don't know if you can unpick that sort of landscape for us.
I think that Gen AI is here and it is just the beginning. So while organizations have certainly not fully taken advantage of what is possible, they are at the door or at the starting line ready to do so. I think the past couple of years have shown that we can be inspired, that companies can automate the base level tasks and start considering the kind of inspirational moonshot use cases that may exist. And they've decided and have committed to investing in their employees and the technology that's necessary to get there, as well as starting to put in frameworks for how to actually capture that value. I would say, though, that even while we're at this starting line, Gen AI is really reshaping enterprises at every level. The investments are soaring, the governance frameworks are becoming in place to actually give shape to what it may look like. And with AI agents specifically, I think we will see the transformation of decision making and this age of systematic AI that the world of the past few years that was doing those science fair projects or POCs will seem so far removed from. So I think that to answer your question, there may be some who are more excited than others, but generally in industry, the sentiment is strong, it is positive, and the ability of platforms, and I'll keep saying it, like Dataiku, to put into the hands of people, regardless of skill set, role, or technical acumen, the builder capability for agents, AI systems, and traditional machine learning models, there's still a place for that, absolutely, is really exciting for many.
And maybe just a final, is there a sort of recommended approach to take? Because I guess one of the attractions is a bit like, I suppose, the cloud, people can go off on their own almost and, try this stuff. And maybe then the IT department loses control, but then it doesn't want to, take an iron grip and stop people being sort of creative. So yeah, I suppose, if it's possible, how do you create the right environment where people respect the sort of data privacy governance concerns, but you also give them the freedom to say, hey, we could use Gen AI here, or how do you control the Gen AI project within an organization, I suppose?
Yeah, this is one of the most difficult things because you have two orgs in contention. There are those who want to move fast and break things, and there are those who are responsible for maintaining the data, the privacy, the security. And bringing them together is critical to a project, not only being, accurate or effective or otherwise impressive, but also scalable, maintainable, and able to be put into a production environment. And so I think that you hit the nail on the head. It's about bringing IT and data and line of business individuals together to work on these projects and accomplish the task. This often means bringing them into the right room, but it can also be about the technology that you invest in, making sure that it is accessible to all teams, and really that IT can put together a framework and an access control pattern and a scenario where the users have access to all the data that they should, the compute resources that they need, the optionality to switch between, cutting edge LLM providers and traditional standard machine learning techniques and otherwise, and then explain audit, version control, everything in one place.
So, yeah, we've talked about a lot. I guess it would be good to understand. I think you've obviously explained a little bit about what it is yourselves do, but it'd be good to understand how you contribute, to help people navigate their way through, the discussion we've had, if you like. Say, what is it that Dataiku?
Dataiku empowers technical and non-technical users to contribute to AI projects, enabling organizations to develop innovative applications faster and with broader organizational buy-in. Enterprises will build and differentiate AI, GenAI, and agents in their most strategic functions, and Dataiku is the platform to build and then govern them all. It really brings together all of the personas we've been speaking about today. It's the advanced data scientists who want to swap between different LLM providers and still have the option to try out the traditional ML techniques of their past. It gives confidence to executives that they'll be able to put their name and stamp of approval behind the projects, which are auditable, governable, explainable in all the fashions you need. It gives business users the ability to come in and provide their expertise on the end use case or the way of doing things from the past, expected application, and also ease of use for applying some of the techniques themselves or building their own agent in a visual fashion. And what's even better is that the IT team responsible for security and governance and accessing data and everything else that has to happen behind the scenes can be confident that those things are maintained, that the process has been followed, and the frameworks that they have in place are indeed checked off and signed.
Okay, it's been fantastic to chat to you. Really enjoyed it and shared some great insights, obviously, into the report and more widely your experience working with folks on their AI projects, the good and the bad, etc. So Emma, just fantastic to chat. So thank you for your time, and maybe we can, catch up in 6 months or 9 months' time, whatever it is, because I imagine this fast-moving space there'll be more to talk about. Well, at least for now. Thanks again for your time. Thank you.
Absolutely, my pleasure.